pray, God, please don't let me screw him up. And see, there was a purpose of this trip. And the purpose of this trip was, yes, for me and my son to go out into the woods and be men and to buy weapons and to poop in the woods and to pee on things. And that was part of the trip. Can I tell you a funny story? This has nothing to do with my sermon, really. So we're hiking and we're like 10 miles, 11 miles into the woods. And he comes up to me, and if he knew I was telling you this, he would freaking kill me. He goes, Dad, I gotta go to the bathroom. He's doing one of these numbers. I'm like, well, dude, we're in the woods. Just go pee on a tree. He's like, no, not pee. And I was like, all right, cool. And so just so happened that we were by they build these shelters on the Appalachian Trail where hikers can stay. And there was an outhouse like 10 miles in the middle of nowhere. So just imagine a porta potty in the 10 miles in the middle of nowhere. So I go, all right, dude, here's some toilet paper. And I go, come here to me real quick. And trust me, you'll do this when you have kids. Don't touch anything. Don't sit on anything. You open everything with your foot. Don't touch anything at all. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. My kid's never really been in a porta potty. We're fairly germaphobe because of our daughter at home. So I sit there and I wait, and he comes back. And he's kind of got this disturbed, slightly concerned look on his face. And he comes up and he just goes, and he's kind of just like shaking his head. I go, hey dude, what's up? Everything okay? This is what my 10-year-old did. I looked in that hole, Dad. He goes, oh. There's just flies and poop. I think one landed on my butt. And I was like, all right, just come on, let's start. And so yes, that was part of the trip. That was part whitewater rafting, experiencing stuff. But there was another part of this trip. And the other part of this trip was I wanted to begin to combat some of the truish beliefs that were beginning to form my son at 10 years old. I wanted to start combating some of the things and some of the definitions of what we give as a man. And what I learned from a 10-year-old boy on that trip is that there were already some very massive, truish things that began to shape him and had already begun to make him the man that he was that are not true at all. See, I wanted him to know what it is to be a man of God. I wanted him to know that it has nothing to do with how far you can walk with a backpack on your back. I wanted him to know that it has nothing to do with how chiseled your abs are. I wanted him to know it has nothing to do with how fast you are, because in elementary school and in middle school, everything, the hierarchy of coolness deals with how fast you can run. Seriously, he's like, he's faster than me. And I'm like, who gives a crap? And I wanted to teach him these things. I wanted to teach him what it means to be a man of God. I wanted to teach him what it means to stick it out and to be brave. And what I realized is that at 9 years old, he had already come to believe things about being a man that are not true at all. They're just truish. They're just don't I have to be brave? Well, yeah, you got to be brave. Well, doesn't that mean, well, no, not really. Doesn't it mean I have to endure? Doesn't it mean I have to be able to tough it out, Dad? Yeah, it does, son, but it has nothing to do with how far you can walk. Don't I have to be manly? Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you have to be able to punch someone in the face and beat them up. And see, at 9, he is already beginning to be shaped by truish statements that will forever affect the rest of his life. So it got me thinking about you, knowing that we were going to be in this series. And if at 9 years old, he has already begun to be shaped by truish statements, what truish statements have we believed that have shaped us and made us who we are? What things have you believed that have resulted in who you are today that really aren't true. And here's the thing, a lot of us don't even know that they're not true. See, the whole thing about deception is you don't even know you're being deceived. The whole thing about believing something truish is we don't know that it's not right in the first place. I'll never forget, man, when we had our daughter Riley and we thought she was not gonna live and we thought she was gonna die, like, I wrestled with God for 2.5 years. I was a pastor. I still wrestle with God. I'm just gonna be honest with you. God, I don't understand this. God, I'm quite honestly, I'm very mad at you right now. You can ask some of the guys I'm with today. There's something that me and my family are walking through right now. And I'm like, God, what the crap? Anybody ever been there? Am I the only heathen in this room? And so I'll never forget, man, my faith for 2.5 years after our daughter was born, and I was still preaching, I was still standing up, and was rocked. And here's what I learned in that. I learned that I had began to believe things about God, and that my faith was based on things about God that were not biblically true at all. I had just heard someone say one time. Let me tell you something as a preacher. Can I give y'all something? As a preacher, you don't ever do this on purpose, but sometimes there will be preachers out there that say a good one-liner to get a crowd response, but it doesn't mean that it's biblically accurate. As a preacher and as someone that stands in front of crowds, you learn to sway a crowd with your words. You can. And so as a man of God, you've got to stay in this place of, I'm not going to do that. Because you learn what gets crowd responses. And what I learned about myself is that there were things that I had come to believe about the character of God that were just truish. There were things that I began to believe about this walk that were just truish, about life and about suffering and about pain and all of these things. Who's ever heard this? Everything happens for a reason. Who ever heard that? No, it doesn't. God will never give you more than you can handle. Yes, He will. You know why? Because if He gives you more than you can handle, you will have to rely on Him more. But that doesn't preach. So what happens is people say that stuff and it ends up forming who we are. It ends up, and we end up having to wrestle with it from time to time. And I realized at 9 years old for my son that he had begun to believe truish things about being a man. What truish things have formed you? What truish things have shaped you to be who you are? There's probably a lot of different ones in this room because we're all different. We've all had different experiences. We've all gone through different things. So what is truish that has shaped my life may not be truish that has shaped your life. But there's one that I think that is super dangerous. And I see it a lot in the church culture, and it scares me for your generation. It scares me for I sound like an old man, your generation. It scares me like for me and my generation as I grow up and you guys. And that is the truish statement that God wants you happy. And I say it's truish because in all honesty, God wants you more than happy. See, but what we've done is we've taught and churches teach and we come to believe that God wants you just happy. And so what we do is we relegate the entire gospel of God. We relegate all of Jesus Christ down to whether I'm happy or not. So what happens is if you're not happy, then God failed. And either God failed you or God's not real. See, the reason that God wants you more than happy is because your happiness is fickle. Your happiness changes. What once made you happy doesn't make you happy anymore. Your happiness changes with your circumstances. But we have whole churches and we have whole things that are stood up, and people believe that God wants you happy. He wants you to have a fat car and a fat house and a good paycheck and all of this different stuff. And listen, yes, God desires for us to have some of those things at times, but God's ultimate goal is not your happiness, because your happiness changes with your circumstances. Think about this. Think about your first car. You remember when you got your first car? Was it not the happiest moment of your life? I'll never forget getting mine. It was 1996, to date myself a little bit. I had a faux hawk. Actually, I didn't. I was in high school. I kind of had like a weird Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber bowl cut. Tommy Hilfiger was the jam in 96. So I had shirts, I'd be like, what's up? I didn't wear skinny jeans, I wore baggy pants, and I had the Tommy Hilfigers where they had like the big like weird flag on them, like I was flagging a ship down. I'll never forget, dude, I came home from a Garth Brooks concert. I'm shameless. I won't go there. So I go to get in my bed, my whole family's asleep, and I put my hand up under my pillow in my bed because that's where I kept my gat. And there was an envelope. And on that envelope, it said this: here are the keys to your new toy because you have been such a good boy. My mom was a part-time rapper. I don't know why she wrote that. I was like, huh. And I could feel the keys in the white envelope. And I opened them, and there they were. I ran into my parents' room. Where is it? It's in the garage. And so I just took off across the house.